Hello, Lindsay, Jane, and Chris. My name is Chris Dreamer. I am the person that has been emailing you incessantly, trying to find a time that would work for us to do our group storytelling session. I thought it'd be easier if I just did this via video instead of writing long emails trying to capture all of the steps of this study. And you can actually see who I am and be introduced to me as a person. It's going to be important that we know one another well in order to get the most out of this study, both for the study purpose, but also for you as participants. Just in all transparency, as all schools are feeling this now, it's crazy. I'm actually in our choir room. I was a choir teacher for half the day today. I have not any choir teaching experience, but that's the job right now. And so this is pretty unrehearsed and will be unpolished, but also gives you an idea of kind of who I am as an educator and what I hope to do with this study and with you as participants. A couple of objectives for this next few minutes of the video is one, to introduce you to me, and then also to give you an overview of the study more specifically, and then a model of what your story can look like when we meet together next Tuesday, the 14th. So about me, I'm an assistant principal here at Manual. This is my first year as an AP, but I've been an administrator here for 5 years, and I taught here for 5 years previously to that, and then previously to that even I taught both in Adams 12 and then overseas in Cambodia. I've been at Manual for 10 years, I live across the street, so being a community member and a teacher is something I value so much, and you can see a picture of my family here. I'm a doctoral candidate at UNC in school reform and innovation. No real plans for the doctorate besides something I've always wanted to do and be challenged by, and I'm thankful to do the program and be at the end. I've got 3 kids, all under 6. You can see Hayes, my boy, he's our oldest. Ruth in the middle, this was her first day of preschool. And then Hannah, she's 3. When I'm not thinking about or participating in some educational work or study, I run, I ski, I wrestle with my kids, explore both Colorado, the West, and overseas, and drink lots of coffee in my current life season. So that's who I am. Been at Manual, love Manual, and see myself here as a long time, but also very fascinated by what I've experienced here, and I think what many of you have experienced in your particular school sites, both the current one and previous, about why some teachers make it and thrive and flourish and why some don't. And that's kind of why I wanted to participate and build this study. So for this study specifically is I'm focusing on whiteness and why certain white teachers decide to work in diverse urban high schools. Some keywords to call out in that. These are very specific. Diverse is over 50 to 60% free and reduced lunch, so it's not just racial diversity, but it's also socioeconomic diversity. Urban high schools, I chose urban as a word because there's a lot of term that I have read a lot around urban schools is this exoticizing them, like, wow, urban schools really must be this or that. And now that we all work in these environments, we know that they're just amazing places where kids thrive. I'm really focusing on whiteness because I also think while it's remarkably important that schools find, train, and retain a diverse group of educators, it's clear that by and large, the teaching corps is white and is continuing to be white, and is actually, those gaps have grown, the whiteness of teachers and the diversifying classrooms in our country over the last 10 years. Those gaps have not shrunk. And so if we don't focus on whiteness in some regard and what white educators can do to be better, we're missing the mark in how we serve our kids. I'm going to ask you to talk about some pivotal experiences that shaped your journey as educators working in these high schools. Like I said, I'll model that here at the end of this quick presentation. And then really want you to think about how you as an educator define success? Is it by LEAP, as DPS has called out? Is it by your own reflection or desire to be better? Is it through your interactions with kids, notes they write you? Or is it through your own definition of what it means to be successful in these environments, in these schools? I mentioned this in the email, and I really want to double down on this. As much as I'm excited to see what comes about in the study, I think it's just as, if not more important, for you as educators to learn about yourselves. Barely is there ever time to stop and reflect and think about our journey as educators, and I want this to be a part of that work for you, to stop and think about who you are and how you've gotten to the place that you can be, or that you are because of the work that you've done. So for our group story session, this will happen on December 14th. We are going to just share our stories. I know that sounds kind of odd, but this is a qualitative study where all of us work and operate in different school environments. And you'll have individually about 10 to 15 minutes just to talk about a student, group of students, and experience, lessons that you've learned, what makes you successful. I know sometimes we shrink at hearing successful because educators are by nature very unwilling to be in the spotlight or to be named as successful because our days are so hard and success seems so fleeting. But what makes you successful? You don't have to answer these all in your story session or in your story that you present, but these are some ideas of what you can share. And then what we'll do after we each share, all three of you will share, and I'll kind of give a little bit more of my story, is we'll just start thinking about what connected us, and I'll facilitate that work. But it really will be that general question is, having heard these stories, what resonated with you? What have you shared? And what have you experienced that are similar? And we can start figuring out some themes from that. I'll use those themes then to drive my observation and interviews of each of you. And we'll kind of come to consensus to see if there's some driving themes around our stories as white educators in diverse urban schools. This is very nebulous, right? It's very emergent, but I also think it'll be powerful for us to maybe find others in this work who have gone through something that we've gone through and that resonate with us. I think sometimes that just person-to-person connection is the most valuable thing when it comes to the work that we do. And so about me a little bit. This is a picture of my AP Human Geography class a long time ago now, almost 7 or 8 years ago. And students were giving a presentation in one of our community rooms on whether or not a middle school should be placed at Manual. Now currently we have a middle school here. Our enrollment's low and there's a middle school on the 3rd floor. And we took it into our own hands to do a geographic study, a demographic study as to why and if a middle school should be placed in this building. And this group of students particularly found that there was no really geographic reason why a school should be at Manual, and looked at the proposals for the middle school and said, like, the programmatic proposal for the middle school that should be here doesn't fit who our students are. And I very much remember the 2 young men on the right standing there just like talking about how the programs for the proposed middle school just wouldn't be something that was enticing for the communities in East Denver. DPS subsequently, I don't know if it was because of this presentation, partly because or not at all, pulled that proposal for another year and reworked the proposal of which school and program should be here at Manual. And now it's a great it was a great project and something that I'm really proud of and I think about all the time. But just a year prior to this, my classroom was one that was total chaos. I actually had these same students as freshmen the year earlier, and I had no idea what I was doing. It was my first year at Manual, my 6th year teaching, and I just got completely overwhelmed by the needs, by my lack of cultural competence, by my inability to connect with students. And in every school I'd been to prior, I had been really well known and well respected. I'd received awards or given graduation speeches, and I came to Manual and I was like ready to quit, like within 6 weeks. And slowly, day by day, I started asking questions to students around, what do I need to do to be better? Like, how can I turn this classroom from like chaos to a place where kids are thriving? And I took their advice to heart. Like every day I changed something. And it took about a year or a year and a half. And my classroom went from one that I couldn't imagine going into another day to one that like I still miss to this very day. And it's because of the expertise of the students in the room and who they were and their understanding of the community and how we could put that at the center of our curriculum that really changed the way I thought about teaching. And so now our biggest focus at Manual, even a decade after this, is centering and forefronting what's happening in our direct community, block by block, and making that instrumental in our curriculum. We've ignored all district curriculum and said unless it directly connects to our kids and our community, it's not something that we'll prioritize. We'll prioritize our students' lived experiences. And I think a lot of that is because of the work we did a decade ago where students said, like, that's not something I'm interested in. Here's how we can change or modify the curriculum and standards and the assignments to make it something we're willing to learn about and want to learn about. And then they just took off from there. And I followed that model for the next few years in the classroom, and it changed completely the way students responded to me and what they experienced in the classroom. And so it's important for me just to call this out as who I am and what I believe about education and who I was and hope to be as a teacher, of valuing the culture, lived experiences, and voice of students, not in a way that just like says like, oh, tell me what you think, but one that actually changes the way that I act on a day-to-day basis. Changes the way I think about policy, changes the way I think about being an administrator, changes the way I think about the student's experience. It's all about their expertise and the valuing of their community in the work that we do. I'm going to stop there. That's a short model, a short example of a story that can be told. I could key in on the stories of those particular students if I wanted to extend it to that 10 to 15 minutes and who they are and what they taught me. Or I also could scale out. Actually, a couple of audience members there have a pretty powerful story to tell as well. So I could extend it out that way as well if I wanted to fill a little bit more time. But I wanted to give an example of who I am as a teacher and also a model of what you guys can share with the group next week when we meet for our group story session on the 14th. So for that session, I'll send out a Google Meets link probably just before. We'll log in. Again, I'll do a quick introduction of myself, and then each of you will have about 10 to 15 minutes, no more than 15, to share a story similar to this. Feel free to use pictures, artifacts, something you have in your desk, whatever. It's your time, and your voice matters, and your expertise will be prioritized. And then I'll facilitate connecting some dots in that session. We'll close that, and then I'll theme the data over winter break, and then I'll reach out for observations and interviews sometime in January for the next step. And we'll all probably come back together once all the data is collected. But for this time, yet to be determined on that, for this time, this will be our only time fully together. As always, feel free to reach out. I think you have my cell phone and my email. If you have questions about the study or about the 14th or kind of how to prepare for that. Otherwise, I just, again, want to thank you so much for participating, for giving time in the middle of a difficult school year. And like I said, my job, my priority, my hope is that not only do you help me finish this long process and journey, but that in so doing, you learn a lot more about yourselves as educators and learn about others who are doing similar work, who have gone through similar experiences as you. Again, thank you, and I can't wait to meet you all via Google next week.